Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you another installment of Sentai Origins, presented by Hirotaku.com. Raptor, we're back again, and what are we discussing today? What's Sentai Origin?
Today we are discussing Denshi Sentai Denziman.
Or for those of you who are Japanese illiterate, that's Electric Squadron Denziman.
Yeah, and this was the fourth Sentai series, at least by the modern count, established by O-Ranger.
Yes. Now, there isn't very much background information we have on it, except that the first episode premiered February 3rd, 1980. And this was the second season to have the Marvel copyright. However, it was not produced or had any involvement from Marvel whatsoever, which is kind of odd, but I guess you can see the tone of it is different than Battle Fever J, of course. And let's go over kind of what the overall plot is and discuss some significant points from the first episode. So basically, it seems that there was a planet called the Denzi planet, in which they were destroyed by the Vader clan.
Yeah, Vader clan, guys. And just keep in mind, this did come out after Star Wars.
Yeah, before Empire Strikes Back, though, because this was February, but no doubt that Star Wars probably had an interesting impact on it. And I do want to talk about the Vader clan and something significant here in a minute.
Yeah.
But anyway, and that was 3,000 years ago. So actually part of the planet, which is this mountain, came to Earth 3,000 years ago and settled itself somewhere near Japan. And inside of it, there is a dog, the Denzi dog, IC, who was basically in cryosleep for the 3,000 years. Then we get to modern day, or what was modern day, and the Vader clan was attacking Earth, and the IC woke up and started going out and recruiting the Denziman. And so basically he recruits them all through what I can only describe as mind control. Because what it is the dog comes up to them, his eyes flash this weird effect, which makes it so creepy.
And then their eyes flash in return.
And then he's able to telepathically communicate with them. Now, I'm sure it's something very benign and all that, but it just seems very creepy when you don't look at the entire context of what's going on, of course.
Especially because no one questions the order.
Yeah, and that's something we'll get into, but he gathers them all up. But the Vader clan, while this is happening, is basically attacking the city. He's protecting the five Denzimen, and people are dying. What's really interesting is there's a scene on this boat where the monster simply these noxious fumes, and then all the fishermen fall to the ground, and then in the next shot they're replaced by skeletons. I swear, watching some of this old Sentai just freaks me out. Because it was this, and then the assassinations of Battle Fever J, and when we get to it, because I've already seen the first episode, Flashman, this woman and this man get liquefied on screen by a monster. So
although liquefying's not as bad as the skeletonization.
I don't know, being turned to a pile of liquid seems pretty bad. But in any case, it's all these early Sentais are really horrific. And I mean,
remember when we were watching Jay and how the Rangers were stabbing people in the head?
Oh yeah, and that it goes to show how violent this actually was and how times have definitely changed. But I will say it definitely shows the power of the threat and the escalation of it. Not to mention, even if you look at Battle Fever J, another thing we did not bring up in the last episode, the second episode of Battle Fever J actually includes a child murder, which is interesting in and of itself. But going back to Denziman right here, so the IC gathers them all up in the mountain, gives them their Captain Planet rings, in which they use to turn into the Denziman. Which I will say, I think the rings are the coolest Henchy device, simply because it's simple, it's compact, it's inconspicuous.
Yeah,
it's easy. Just activate it and you're good.
Yeah, especially considering how large some of the later Henshin devices are, and we're expecting
Tokyo Ranger.
I haven't seen the Tokuger ones.
They are pretty big. I'll show you that afterwards.
I'm just thinking of I'm just imagining how huge the Moby rates are in Gokaiger.
Yeah.
And the fact that we expect them to be kept in their pockets when, yeah.
Yeah. So they transform and they immediately go out in the Denzi Tiger, which the one thing I really like about the early Sentai is these flying fortresses is what they're called. So, because basically it can fly in the air, it can become a tank mode, and inside of it is the Denzi Robo. It's like an all-in-one base, basically, which is pretty cool. And there's a pretty interesting miniature fight with the base, basically, being attacked, shooting missiles off.
By air fighters.
And then they leave the base. They do the ground stuff, which it still seems like a very chaotic situation going on with the editing.
Yeah, the editing is... So there, one scene that bothered me in particular was it was a chase scene. The monster had ran away. They were chasing it down. And the narrator announced that the Denziman could run, what was it?
100 meters in 3 seconds.
100 meters in 3 seconds. And they skipped with the editing. So there was one frame, they're here.
Yeah, they were just dropping frames is what they were doing.
Yeah, they were dropping frames. And I understand what was being gone for there, but it just looks strange.
I would really like to know what the general idea of editing in the late 70s, early 80s is in Japan, because we've seen this consistent with the last 3 Sentais that we've been watching, that this really chaotic type of editing with dropping of frames, repeating of shots, and so forth.
And I think that was mostly a 70s and 80s thing.
Yeah, I just want to know where that came from, because we never had anything like that here in the United States. As far as that time period is concerned.
There was some stuff like that in the 70s. If you look at some 70s exploitation films, the repeating of a shot was pretty popular.
Yeah, but that's exploitation. That's a whole nother discussion to go ahead and talk about too. But we get into the battle, and I want to bring up some interesting points about the battle, other than the editing. Because what's really cool is that we have an omnipotent narrator, which I think might be the dog or the computer intelligence. Because the dog's not in control. It's the computer that's talking to him. Yeah, but he's given this, he's telling us how fast they can run, how high they can jump, how their helmets can look in other dimensions. Which is nice that they establish their powers to begin with, and we have an understanding of what they can and can't do. Then the monster is able to grow by himself. It says he changes his cellular structure to change sizes. Which, hey, at least we got an explanation, and it wasn't like a wand or a bomb or anything like that coming down to make him bigger.
Hey, magic wand makes sense.
True, but at least they kind of explain it other than just, quote, magic. But in any case, then they call the Denzi Robo, and I love the sequence here because it launches from the base, it forms, and they don't immediately jump into it. They have to enter into the foot through a door and take the elevator up to the cockpit.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this monster probably has destroyed half the city by the time they get there.
Yes, I just think that's so hilarious that, it's practical. That's the thing. Now, I'm sure in later episodes it'll be the same thing. They just rush through it and the robot's there. I mean, that's what they've done. They did in Go-Go 5. They did in Go Buster. It takes a while to transform, but we're just going to move through it quickly for latter episodes.
It's just to make it look cool in the early episodes.
Or at least show that it's more difficult than you would imagine.
Exactly.
And then we get to the battle, which it's a pretty decent battle. I don't see many of those editing issues in the robot battle. But of note, they actually, to finish the monster, they decapitate it.
Yeah, and before we talk about, before we move on from this monster, I'm going to say this was a weird-looking monster.
Yeah, it is. Now,
I'd like to see if there were more monsters with that similar...
Yeah, the thing is, the way they explain the monsters is they hatch from eggs, and pollution, accelerates their growth. And this monster was able to send out noxious gas, which killed the fishermen. I don't know if it killed or just knocked out the policemen and all that, but it seems to be so far the Vader motif is pollution and destruction. Sort of like you said, early prototypes of the Go-Onger villains. But yeah, they decapitate this thing and it blows up.
It blows up, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the end of the episode. and basically, is really heavy on plot and exposition, and not too much on the characters. And let's get to the characters in a minute. But I want to talk quickly about the Vader clan.
All right.
Now, the first thing we notice is that their leader is the woman, I can't remember her name, that played Witch Pandora in Zoolander.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the same actress. And then, of course, she went on to play the Mystic Mother character from Magi Ranger, whatever her equivalent is. And she was, I think, in another Sentai prior to Zoolander, although I'll have to confirm that. But yeah, she's kind of like a veteran of the series when you think about it in that context. But yeah, that's Witch Pandora, definitely. Also, I find it odd, because we brought up the Star Wars thing, and it is called Vader, and as any Star Wars fan knows, Darth Vader essentially means Dark Father.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it interesting.
Female.
Yes, the Vader clan is led by a woman. Her two of her three minions are women. But of course, it seems like one of her minions is, what was his name? He was a smog monster from...
Hedorah. Yeah, his name was Hedorah, which, if you're a Godzilla fan, you'll recognize that as the name of the smog monster, who was also pollution-themed.
Yeah, so I love how it's a patriarchal hierarchy here.
And this came out after Godzilla versus the smog monster, by the way.
So
we're ripping off Godzilla and Star Wars.
Yes, or paying homage, however you want to go ahead and look at it.
Oh yeah, we can probably throw out accusations of ripping off Kamen Rider with the scarves.
Yeah, but of course, remember, Kamen Rider and Sentai were created by the same person. He wanted the scarf motif, and that was just a thing in the 70s and 80s. So,
all right.
Yeah, you can't call it rip-off if it's the same guy making it.
Okay.
But yeah, the Vader clan, they seem like, again, another alien. This was actually the first science fiction thing we had, because as we said with the first three that we watched, it was a terrorist organization, a criminal syndicate, and a religious cult. This is actually an alien force from space.
Aliens in Sentai.
Yeah, now, I don't know about, like, the Battle Fever, like the Egos, we don't know exactly what they are. But this was the first, this, at least from our perspective, is the first space invaders that is at least established in the first episode. Mm-hmm. Because, again, the first three Sentai series really seem to be a down-to-earth, pardon the pun, I guess, type of series.
Street-level fighting. That's what it was.
And it was mostly based on espionage, spying, military kind of stuff, and not, again, this big science fiction thing, which is why this is the first time their mentor is a dog or computer, however you want to go ahead, and whatever that truly is, instead of a general in a suit with a mustache.
Another thing I'd like to point out is that, speaking of more sci-fi things, the weapons are more sci-fi.
Yes.
In that it's a specialized pair of power
gloves, electric gloves, gauntlets, whatever.
Instead of, face it, mundane weapons.
Yeah, or weapons that transform into other weapons, which of course would be later used in, say, Die Ranger. But this was they were practical weapons. I mean, they had the boomerangs and they did the special little combined spark thingy. Yeah. But for the most part, it didn't seem really out there. It did seem like they have not a supernatural, but a scientific alien origin.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about the Vader clan?
I guess this was a pretty hammy Sentai villain to start off with, so that's...
Yeah, and I think that's what we get out of the actress, and I think that's part of her charm, and that's why she came back so many times within the series. I want to quickly talk about the Denziman as far as their characters and what very little there is. See, Denzi Red, I couldn't tell you anything about him other than he practices karate.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a stereotype since it's coming from the Japanese themselves.
Well, it just establishes him as a disciplined athlete.
Yeah.
Which is a common red trope.
So there isn't anything to say about him, really. Now, Denzi Blue, he played the previous season as Bao Kenya, same actor, different character, of course. He still associates himself with animals, but he's not said to talk with them.
Yeah, he is a circus acrobat.
Yep, circus acrobat. So it seems like he either he was really good or he wanted to come back or something. And I guess in Japan, you could probably get away with that more as far as bringing back actors for another season and play a completely different character. Because that seems to happen a lot in Sentai. Doesn't happen as much in a lot of American shows that I've seen, unless it's like, oh, we're his ancestor, and the show's in the future and the past and stuff like that. Sort of like Brett Spiner in Enterprise.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, nothing much to say about him, but he seems like he's the fun one, and he was that way as Bao Kenya. So he's probably typecasted like that.
Yeah. Although Gavan is not a fun-loving character, so
which is something I probably have to see too. Denzi Yellow. The only thing about him is he's a scientist. That's the only thing we learned.
We know about him.
Is that he's a scientist. Pink is pretty much the same way. All we know about her is that she's a tennis player. Which is I want to bring this up. It's really odd because she's playing with her coach in a match of tennis. Then he gets set on fire, and I'm assuming he dies because when you get shot by lightning and all
maybe that's just motivation for her.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. In the very next shot that we see her, she's just standing around bored. Like nothing happened. It's not even like time passed. She's wearing the same outfit that she did when he died. So, I mean, what that tells me, again, if the editing's correct, he got set on fire, she got contacted by the dog, and then when the dog left, she's just standing there bored. I don't get that. There seems to be something reoccurring with the women in Sentai where they seem to be so detached emotionally from immediate death of people who are father figures or their actual father.
Well, I mean, when we watched Battle Fever J, Diane was torn up about.
But I'm specifically talking about when we get to the second episode, and of course, remember that line she had: "Shopping's the best way to mourn my father."
Okay, yeah.
That's the point I'm making. I don't know what that's about.
And maybe this was because in these earlier days, Sentai was aiming for more simple characterization.
Yeah, but I still don't. I mean, if we killed somebody in a script, it has to mean something. It just can't be random. I mean, the fisherman, yeah, that makes sense. But for a character who's associated with, our main character, I don't know. Now, the only one who actually got some sort of character development here, or we at least established some, was Denzi Green. So basically, they send one of the eggs to Earth, and that's what they hatch into the monsters. He is a cop, along with his father, who I think is like a detective or something, go to investigate into a warehouse, and his father dies after being attacked by the monster. So now he's got this vengeance against the Vader clan to,
kill them all.
Well, yeah, to avenge his father, basically. Which, again, when we take in the Vader thing, and it's just odd when you think of those types of connections. I know I'm playing up the father part so much, but that's what it means, Vader. So...
I would be very, very surprised if there was zero Star Wars influence on that.
Yes. So, basically we have, he's the most defined character in the first episode. That we know what his motivations are, we have an understanding of, how he got to where he is, because, being a cop is not easy, And maybe that'll play out through the rest of the season. I don't know, but I would be interested to know more, where he goes with his father's vengeance. Because, revenge stuff is always interesting depending on where you take it with the character.
Yeah, and, okay, while we're on the topic of the characters, let's discuss possibly the most egregious thing of the episode.
Okay.
The fact that the characters didn't know each other before being summoned by the dog, and do not interact with each other at all when they're gifted their powers, and then fight completely in sync with each other once it's time to fight a monster.
And seeing that's what the dog thing, the Denzi dog, is that it almost seems like he is using mind control, because it would explain how they were able to find the base, how they knew to transform, how they knew how to operate the vehicles, how they knew to operate their powers and all that.
Yeah, how they were completely aware of the scope of their powers.
Exactly. I mean, if he beamed that into his head like Travolta did in Battlefield Earth, with the Cyclo data machine, then that would go ahead and make sense. But the way they're acting, where they really don't, like you said, interact or talk to each other, it does seem like they're almost under mind control, which is kind of creepy.
Mind control.
Now, again, they're the heroes, so it might be something completely benign and we're reading too much into it, but it just seems odd that way given, how we're introduced to the situation.
Exactly. And, I was really getting the feeling that this is when Sentai was really starting to shift over into toy sales. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Sentai merchandising hadn't really taken off yet. But it just seems like that, especially the way that the narrator was describing how cool and powerful they are and how Red was showing off so many different special weapons and abilities in the first fight.
Well, also keep in mind, this was the first season in which we got a transforming robot. Because in previous season, Battlefield Fever J didn't transform. I think they still have Carrier Base. But again, this is the first time you have this transforming stuff going on. So that's a relative first for the series.
And it is known that the reason that the Toei Spider-Man series had a mecha was because they wanted to sell mecha toys because robot toys were popular in Japan at the time. And it was applied to Battle Fever J, and here it is being applied to...
And that would logically explain the shift from the military organization and against the crime syndicate spy stuff and all that into a robot science fiction thing. Because it looks like the toy sales, and we have no evidence to back this up, but it just seems likely given what's happened, drove the plot to shift to more science fiction based series, and eventually when we get to Zoo Ranger into more fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things to go ahead and take from this, and I liked it. As always, I do think it was a bit rushed. Again, I think Battle Fever J has done the best as far as establishing characters.
Yeah, the ones we've watched so far, Battle Fever J has been the one I enjoyed the most, just because it made me care about the characters.
And like I said, until the third act, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that was Denziman, and I enjoyed it, and Raptor, you enjoyed it too. So
I kind of
Chota. Well, yeah, I mean, so far I can't say I haven't liked any of the first episodes. I can't say that. I've enjoyed them all. They're all unique in their different ways. And they explore different things as far as motifs and all that.
Yeah, Sentai is still stumbling around in these early days.
Yeah, they haven't found their identity yet, but they'll quickly get there by the spandex era, I believe.
Yeah.
But next time we're going to we're going to watch basically what's the sequel series to Denziman, Sun Vulcan. And we will talk about Sun Vulcan. So, Raptor, thank you for joining me and watching with me today.
To be here.
Yeah. And guys, go ahead and check out that episode, and we will be back next time with our Sentai Origins on Sun Vulcan. So have a good night, and the tavern is now closed.